Hey, welcome back to the last section of Mixing in Mixbus 2.0. I'm going to show you just a few last things before we put this thing to bed. At this phase, after I print the mix, I would normally take it to my vehicle and listen to it on a system that I'm used to listening to other stuff, and I would basically listen to this mix as a consumer for the first time instead of like somebody who had my head around bits and all that kind of stuff and how much the compression ratio was, and I would just listen to it and see how it made me feel, and then I would probably bring some notes back in and make some tweaks. So I'll spare you that amount of detail, and we'll just finish it up after this. But I do want to show you just a couple things about this master fader, or this master channel. One thing is the phase correlation meter. You'll want your mix to stay in the green pretty much. If it starts hanging out over here in the red, I'll show you. This mix is pretty much good and stereo, but and you know what? Let me go ahead and erase this plug-in here. I'm going to delete this plug-in because we don't need it anymore. Let me try that one more time. Delete, and now there's nothing there. So this is the there's nothing extra on this channel. Everything you're hearing this fader, this master channel do, it comes with it, which is really cool. The phase correlation meter is the first thing I want to talk about. You'll want your mix to hang out on the right side. Anytime you've got anything going to the left, you may have phase problems. So check out this mix here.
For certain is the good times never last too long.
See, it's hanging out to the right. That's a good indicator that you'll have a mix that will translate into mono and will translate into other systems pretty well. The next thing I want to look at is this K14 meter. Now, the way I look at the K14 meter is it's like a loudness meter, as it says a master average level, and it gives you a good indication of whether your levels are healthy or whether the loudness of your mix is going to be perceived as loud. And I've come up with a phrase that says mixing in the V. Basically, you want to keep your meter between these, the -4 and the +4, and it can go into the red a little bit, and you'll know that you're getting a pretty healthy level. So let's watch and make sure that level's doing that.
So I laugh every chance I get.
So it is, and so if it was down low, let's see if I pull the master fader down.
Learn to forgive and
yeah, see. So that looks pretty healthy, and probably what I want to do on this mix is I want to add just a little bit of top end to this. So let's do that as we listen.
Somehow or the other, I meet the end.
Not too much, just a little bit more air up there at the top. And notice that when I turned this on, the tone, when I started pushing this, is when the tone came on. I just think that is the coolest thing. The next thing I want to look at is tape saturation. We're already hitting it pretty well, but you can actually take this button and make it hit tape, quote unquote, a little bit harder. And let's see what that does to it.
To the song, living in the moment, nothing is wrong. It's all gonna change anyhow. I've got nothing but now.
Probably just leave it around 0. So you know, these are taste things, and these are things I'm just doing at the last minute to kind of hopefully put my mix over the top. One last thing I want to talk about. This, of course, has the same compressor complement that the other channels do, and I think I've got it compressed enough that I don't need to worry about this too much. What I do want to look at is the limiter, which if you look right here, you'll see in a minute you'll see yellow pop over here. This is the brick wall limiter for this channel. This is to make sure that you don't go over what you're supposed to go over. Most DAWs and most engineers want to send their mix out at to make the peaks at 0.1 dB under 0, which means that you've got 1/10 of a dB before you actually start hearing some cracking and popping and some distortion and things like that. The guys at Harrison, one of the things they've designed into this is that they allow for more headroom than that, and I'll explain why. I'll try to explain why. Basically, when you send out, especially MP3s, and you send them out at that hot of a level, basically you are very, very, very dependent on how good the converters are on the other end, and you have no control over that. People might be listening to your mix on a set of $10,000 D to A converters, and they may be listening to it on some $10 Walkman too. And you want your mix really to sound about as good, if you can, have it sound just about as good on the cheap converters as you do the expensive converters. Now one of the big differences between the two converters is that there's more headroom on the higher end converters. It handles overages, in other words, things going over zero or getting close to zero, better than cheap ones do. So what we want to do is make sure that the output is set to -1 dB. And when you do that, you're allowing a little bit of forgiveness on the other end. In other words, somebody might say, I don't know what it is about this mix, but this mix sounds better than this other mix. And the only difference in the mix is that there's a little bit more headroom on the other end of one mix that sounds more open. I hope I'm making sense on that. So this brick wall limiter is actually set to -1 dB. So that's something, I'm not sure that you can go in and change that, and it's really by design because they want a little headroom built in. They want our mixes to sound better. And I'll tell you the truth, I've run a couple of tests, and it absolutely is true that if you give it just a little bit more headroom, like mix it at -1 dB instead of -0.1 dB, your mix does somehow sound a little bit more open. And it could be the converters that I'm listening to it on, but anyway, that will allow you a little bit more room to kind of step on the limiting just a little bit. So this is the indicator of how much limiting you're getting. This is how you turn it on, the green button. Now the orange one is so that you can set the look ahead limiting, and I'll let you listen to it with and without it. Let's listen to this mix without it. You can almost hear the limiter working a little bit. And I didn't like that until I found the look ahead, which means it sees a peak coming and it goes ahead, and instead of it catching the limiter by surprise, the limiter is one step ahead, and it goes ahead and pulls the level down a little bit, so it makes the mix sound a little bit more open. So I'll let you hear without and then with.
About life, and it seems to me the glass is either half full or half empty. It's all in how you look at all the endless possibilities.
And if you didn't want this to hit quite so hard, it's still going to be peaking at -1 dB. We could actually take the input gain and trim it back a little bit. We could actually compress it here before it gets there a little bit if you wanted to. There's a couple things you're going to do. I'm just going to pull down the input gain just a little bit.
And I may never have a lot.
I think that'll be enough to get us going. So that's everything that I would do to this master fader. I mean, I would probably go to my car, listen to it, and probably make a few changes, but like I said, I'm going to spare you that detail. What I am going to do is do a master fade at the end, because after she stops singing around here, I want to do a slow fade so we don't get this part here, because this part was never intended to be on the record. It's kind of a live band ending. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a fade here. Probably start it here. So anyway, I'll start a fade somewhere in that section, and I'll be out before the end of this. So let's go back to the channel. I'm going to put this in touch mode, and then we are going to listen. So I'm going to push that back up to 0 there. Okay, so let's make sure that we're at where she stops singing right around here, and we'll play it. I'll go back. Okay, I didn't quite make the fade enough, but I've got enough on there to be able to work with. So let's take this and look at the automation. Let's show existing automation and see right there where the fade happened. Okay, I've stripped away some of the fader moves, or some of the channels that we're not looking at right now. And what I want to do is I want to take a look. Let's see, I want to erase some of this stuff in between, and then I want to save one at the very end there. Let's do that. Now let's just take this bottom and let's just move it to where it needs to be, which I think it'll be, let's look at the last kick, it'll need to be before this. Okay, so right there, let's just move this over here so that it's nice and it's out by the time. So let's listen to the fade now. That's a nonlinear fade. In other words, it doesn't have a little arch to it. It's pretty much just math. Okay, I'm just going to move it up just a little, even a little bit more, so that, because you could almost tell that they were going to end it. So that's my fade there. I won't worry about this stuff here. So this is my fade, and the next thing I want to do is I want to move the end marker up to just beyond that fade, to where when I export the song, it knows that the end of the song is actually here and not past there, so there's not a lot of blank space. And I want to do the same thing with the start marker. I want to do one more thing before we print the song. I want to clean up this tambourine because it starts well before the song. And I want it to start right about the... I don't want it to be playing through here. I just want it to be banjo and guitars. So let's zoom in. Okay, I want it to start actually right there. Let me just move the cursor to here, right where I want to cut it. And let's... Command E, and then what we'll do is we'll take that region there and mute it. So now the tambourine shouldn't start until right then. Okay, that's about where I wanted it. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to move the start marker back to where the band starts to play. So about right there. Okay, so let's look at the guitar and the banjo where they start playing, and let's just mess with this start marker and put it right where it's supposed to be. Okay, so that's about what I wanted right there. We've got the start marker and the end marker set. And so now what I want to do is actually go to session and go to export and export session to audio file. Okay, and this is where I can set my parameters. I actually want this to be 44.1 16-bit so that you can import it into any CD burner. And it's just best when you do it in this mode instead of letting some aftermarket place to it. You want to make sure that master 1 out is left and master 2 out is right. That's probably going to come up for you anyway, but just want to take a look at that. Best conversion quality, and here if you want to name the wave, what you want to do is just go here and let's call it nothing now mix 1. Okay, and then basically all that's left to do is export, and we'll do that. And it does it in faster than real time, so if you notice the seconds are ticking off pretty quick. It's doing it all offline. Everything we've done to the mix it's doing offline. This is one thing I like about it too. You can actually print it off and not have to listen to it one more time. My wife can't understand how I can listen to a song hundreds and hundreds of times. I can't either sometimes, but anyway, so I'll let this go ahead and spin off and then we'll take a listen to it, okay? So it is on the desktop now. I'm going to take a look at this and let you listen to the mix. I'll close this down. And this is the export folder, and I'll just hit the space bar on my Mac to listen to it.
either half full or half empty.
There's our fade. Okay, so you can't really tell that they ended the song. Over to our session, and I'm going to show you just a couple other things that you could do. If you wanted to just export a certain section, say you had a guitar player who was going to replace a solo, and you wanted to select the section that the solo was in, you have an option to go to Session and export. Instead of Session to audio file, you can do Selected Range to audio file. Alternatively, you can export the selected regions to an audio file. So if I wanted to, I could just select the snare drum and export the snare drum, or just the loop or the tambourine or things like that. So there's a couple of options that you can use. We won't do that right now, but probably at this point what I would do is I would go back here and mute the lead vocal and print another mix, and we call that, in Nashville we call it a TV track, so that if this artist ever were to be on a morning show or a night show or something like that where she absolutely needed some soundtracks, the only thing missing from this mix would be her vocal. So we call that a TV track. I would probably run one of those, and then I would probably go back again and run a instrumental track, which is just good for having in the archives, just in case she wanted to take another stab at singing it, and maybe her brother or her sister is now singing background vocals and she wants to replace those. So I guess that concludes the way I mix in MixBus 2. There's a lot of really cool features that you should take a look at that really warrant an upgrade if you don't already have one, and so I would highly recommend this. There's a lot of cool things in here that make it a lot easier to mix with, resizing things like I'm doing right now. So I'll leave it just like this. If you would like to, come over and let me know that you got this video and that you have learned something, or maybe you can teach me something. I'm open book, and I'd love to hear from you guys. So until next time, keep on mixing, and I will see you soon.